is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Welcome everybody to The Way to Break Free. I am your host, Angie Pedigo, and I have my special guest here today, Miss Lindsey Collins. You guys are in for a treat. Lindsey, welcome to the show. I won't delay any further because this is going to be so good. I'm so glad you could come on. Lindsey, I met her at church actually, and the whole story of her and her children and just the whole dynamic is just beautiful. So Lindsey, tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Lindsey. I have two children. My oldest just turned 16 and my youngest is 12. And I've been a single parent since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm now 33. So.
She does not look like she is 33 or has two children. So, yeah, life has been taking care of you well.
Thank you.
Oh, so you've got quite the story surrounding just your whole adventure with motherhood.
Yeah.
Totally. So tell us a little bit about that. Take us back to the beginning.
Well, I found out that I was pregnant with my son when I was 15.
Okay.
And at the time, it was terrifying.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Because I grew up just being raised by my dad and my grandma, so I didn't really know how to be motherly. So that was a fear that I had. And then I ended up having my daughter at 19.
Okay.
So still single parent, but I had the two before I was 20.
That's a lot to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was that like, being a teenage mom?
It was very isolating because it was hard to know who to trust and who to be friends with at that time, because that's already a learning experience as a teenager. Mm-hmm. You're learning who you're going to be and all that. So I was already destined to be a mother, and it was hard for me to understand at that time what that meant. Like, my future was. I didn't really think that I had a future other than that, which I was wrong, but that's what it felt like at that time.
Yeah. It doesn't change the fact that you still, you have to become an adult, but you're still a kid too.
Yeah, that was really hard, was knowing things that I could do and couldn't do, because I missed out on a lot, but I was learning, the beginnings of being a mother and having babies and all the things that you actually have to be present for that I had no idea about yet, and still trying to understand who I was as a person. So that part was hard to navigate for me.
Yeah, identity would be tough, I would think.
Because even though I was a child, I was still held to those responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And that was scary and a hard lesson for me to learn.
Was it hard sometimes to think, for this moment or this event, I want to wear the teenage hat, but for this event, I've got to wear the mom hat, and reconciling the two.
I had to learn how to put them above what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard.
Oh, I can only imagine at that age. Yeah, for sure. Oh, so what was it like? I mean, like, you had your son first, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was how old when you had your daughter?
They're 3 years apart. So
oh, wow.
He was about to be 4.
So you had your hands full.
And he's a very hyperactive child. So I always tell him he was a handful, but precious, but still definitely a handful.
Yes.
Lots of energy.
Oh boy!
But he was excited when she was born. He was excited to have a little sister.
Yeah.
And I was excited when I found out she was a girl, because I wanted a girl too. So we were we were pretty excited about her arrival when it happened, but
Yeah.
still very, very young. But
Yeah. So what was it like after she was born?
um, well, I'll start with saying this: when my son was born, um, before me and his father separated, his family was very involved with him,
Mm-hmm.
and my family at the time was very involved. So there was a lot of decisions that I didn't get to make for him because he was my first child and I was so young. There was a lot of people in the way, and I didn't feel like I learned a lot of the newborn stuff that I should have been learning because there was always somebody trying to do it for me or not necessarily just taken from me, but I'll do it instead. You don't know what you're doing. So with her, I was like, I wanted to do everything myself and I didn't want to ask for help. And I didn't want anybody coming in and telling me what I couldn't do with her. So,
Did you ever feel like you were expected to be a mom but wasn't allowed to be a mom?
yeah,
I've worked with some other people that have been in that
definitely
situation. Yeah.
how it felt because, like I said, the responsibilities of being a mother, I understood I had to do those things, but it was like the grace of allowing me to learn. I wasn't given that. So when she was born, it was kind of just like you're on your own because she didn't have all that extra help from her father's family and stuff. So it was really just me and her at that point, but also had my son.
Yeah.
But that was the hard part is learning how to protect her.
So you're in a position at that point with the second child. Now it's really time to learn how to do the things that you had help doing before.
Yeah,
Yeah. What'd that feel like? Was that
scary.
I bet.
It was scary because it was all up to only me, and there was no breaks or nobody would take her if she was crying to help me to go tend to Caden, which is my son, or just to go take a shower or feed myself or anything. That's another thing is that I wasn't in the best of health because I wasn't even thinking about me anymore, and it was all about them. And you can't take care of others when you're not in a good place either. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. That makes it difficult. Now she ended up with some health issues. Is that right?
When she was at the hospital, she was okay, and she was eating well and all that. And then when we took her back home, I was on WIC at the time because that's the only way I could afford to feed her. And they had changed her formula, which was like this really generic version of what she had at the hospital, and it was too hard on her stomach. So she would immediately just projectile vomit every time she ate, not just sometimes, but every time. So she would eat it, but she couldn't keep it down. And I would take her to the doctor, and they had her stomach x-rayed. They did tests on her and just whatever they could do. And they weren't finding anything wrong with her.
So nobody knew at this point that it was the milk causing it.
And when I would try to explain that to them, nobody would listen to me because I'd went through something similar with my son. He had to have the same thing, different milk at the time when he was a baby. But I'd had help from family getting all that worked out. And with my daughter, I didn't have that. So that was a whole other complicated situation. And that's what led to her being in state custody is because she was underweight and I couldn't get her back to a normal weight.
Wow. So how did that process happen? Like were the doctors just reporting in like this child is not gaining weight or
I had a babysitter watch her and they took her to the hospital and left her there and left my son there too, so they were both there.
Oh wow.
And they wouldn't wait for me to get back to pick them up, which was another situation of me trusting the wrong person.
Yeah. I can see where trust would be very, very difficult.
I didn't know that my whole life was going to change that night, which in the long run, I'm glad that it happened because it got her the help she needed.
Yeah.
And definitely it got her where she needed to be. But the way I was treated from then on was really what, I wouldn't say it was my downfall, but it started a lot of trauma for me in that experience.
Being in the system situation.
I'd never been in
Yes.
trouble for anything in my life, ever. So they made me feel like a criminal pretty much. And it was the hardest part for me is that I just wanted to understand what was wrong with my daughter.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with my son. He just happened to be there. So um, they reported it as abandonment before I even got there. So
Wow.
it was already a whole process started before I even got there.
Oh, wow. Did they ever listen to or take into consideration what you were saying? Like your side, like,
I never got to testify, and because I was with my friends at the time this happened, they didn't get to testify. Nobody in my family got to testify. They just immediately wanted to take her because she was sick, I guess, and they knew they could place her. That's how I felt about it.
mm-hmm.
But I wish that there would have been some understanding with seeing that I was just a person who needed help and needed support in that moment, because there was never a moment where I didn't want either of my children.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
just wanted an answer for what was going on.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of traumatic situations that come out of the system. I mean, I hate to say it, the system is there for supposed to be a help, but there's a lot of trauma, extra trauma that comes in from the system a lot of times.
Yeah.
I hate you had to go through that. I really do. That so. What were some of the most trying moments in that?
Just being compliant with social services and doing everything they asked me, even if it upset me,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't react the way I felt inside, because if I did, I wouldn't get to see them
Yeah.
anymore. And I had to suppress a lot of my anger and sadness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can
And
imagine.
on the other side of that is everybody knew me, everybody saw this happening to me, and the things people would say.
A lot of pain in that. So from there, they placed her into a.
We went through the process of filling out the paperwork to have her adopted, because I was basically left with the choice of uh, do I give my rights up, or do I keep fighting and then possibly still not get custody of her back? And then that would affect my son's life and her life. So I had to really sit with myself on that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a court hearing that Tanya actually gave me a ride to. And on the way home, because she was staying with them already.
And Tanya is the adopted mom.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So she was already in their home, but she would give me rides sometimes to the court hearings, because she would have to be there too, and I didn't have a way to get there at the time. And she would even feed me sometimes, because she knew that I wasn't taking care of myself and stuff. So she had taken me to a court hearing. I don't remember exactly what it was for, but the whole time I was just holding Arbor at the court hearing and bawling, because every time we went I was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that. But on the way back I was really thinking about it, and I'll never forget it. We were in the car and I looked over and I was like, I really feel like she needs to stay with you, and I would really, it would mean a lot to me if you would adopt her, if you want to, if that's what you want to do. And she prayed with me and we cried, and she promised me that she would never tell her that I didn't love her or anything. So, sorry.
You're fine.
We kind of, from that moment, I didn't know if I would ever see her again.
You just had to have a lot of faith. You had to trust in that moment.
But when I met Tanya and her husband, leading up to all that, which that's the short version.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happened in between, but when I met them, I was waiting in a room, and they told me that this couple was coming. And when they came around the corner, they were smiling from ear to ear, and they brought so much light into that situation immediately. And the way they talked to me and the way they made me feel like it was going to be okay, I had to trust that she was going to the right place. So, like I said, they've always been so kind to me. But yeah, that was initially me surrendering her, and I ended up signing my rights over after that, so they could adopt her. And then they went through the adoption process, but she had already been with them for like a year, I think, before that, which I'd been visiting her and all that. So,
wow. So
the
there's a
gist of
lot
it.
to unpack there. Let's start with how was it for you that first year that she was with them, and you're in this place of, what do I do? Do I sign my rights over? Do I not? And the reason I say let's explore that for a minute, I work with a lot of females that are in that position. What do I do? What do I not do? And watching them have to deal with, do I fight because I want my child to know that I fought to the very end, or do I sign my rights over? And if I do, is it the best thing for them? Are they going to a place that is going to take care of them and love them? And, what am I doing? What is the best thing for me to do for this child at this point? Because your mama heart's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what was that like for you? And I'm saying from a standpoint of how, so that others that are in that position could relate to that.
I would say that you have to put the child first, no matter how much it hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You really do, because you don't know. You don't know what the future is like, and that was the hardest part of the whole thing. Is, when I was making my decision, is what will my future be like, and what will her future be like if I'm in it or not in it. But I knew that with or without me, she would be better. She would be better for her to be safe than to be with me struggling and possibly misguiding her life because I wasn't healed yet from things that weren't her fault.
Yeah.
And also considering her age, because she was an infant, so she wouldn't remember me that way, you know what I mean? But my son was older, so like I said, I made the decision based on both of them, and I just couldn't bear him not being able to see me anymore after him knowing I was his mama, which was, like I said, still really hard, because when she was adopted, he went to go live with his dad, and I only got to see him on the weekend. So I really had to think a lot about, am I going to give up and let them live without me completely? Am I going to give up and let all these people be right about what they think I did or didn't do, or my love for them, or just me as a person, because it really messed with my self-confidence and who I thought I was, because I feel like I do everything from my heart, and when you do that, it's easy to get mixed up with the wrong people who don't care about you or your children. And I felt like I was doing a lot of that at that time because I just wanted to feel love. And then here I am with these two kids that I don't even understand that they're going to be individuals and they're going to have their own lives and stuff. So I really had to think about that. And even though that was the decision I made for her, I still questioned it for years.
Yeah.
But it was
selfless.
It was right for her.
Yeah, absolutely. That was selfless on your part. So they adopted her. You came to that conversation. I can only imagine what it was like in that vehicle when you and Tanya were having this conversation. Um, did the adoption happen pretty quickly?
A lot of that time period's really blurry for me.
Yeah.
Especially on that side of it. So it probably felt like forever for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that she was with them from that moment I first met them until she was adopted. So she was never anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, it probably felt like forever to me because the days were very, very long for me. Because that's another thing is I went from having these 2 kids every day to being completely alone. Waking up completely alone because I had moved out and had my own apartment because that was one of the things on the plan that I was trying to work through at the time. I had to have my own place and a job and all that. And I got this apartment and I was completely alone all the time. And that was very, very hard because I didn't want to be alive anymore without them. And the thing that really made me decide to not just never even fight or try or any of that was that I pictured my kids being old enough to want to know where I am and I'm not there or I'm dead or I'm in jail because I just gave up. And that's what would have happened if I hadn't.
Yeah. So you were focused on how are they going to find you?
Yeah. Which I still got to see my son, but I wanted my rights. Which I never signed my rights over to him, but I wanted to be an active mother to him too, not just somebody he saw on visits. So eventually I did go and get joint custody of him. So that brought me some healing, but then I still have to live with, okay, my daughter's adopted though, but I do get to see both of them now.
Yeah.
And if I had just let all the anger and sadness swallow me, which I did do that for many years. It took me years to try to get back up because I felt so much shame from what had happened. I didn't see the point of trying to be a person anymore.
What was the turning point for you?
I need to think about this. Well, it really took me 7 years. So this happened in 2013, and I didn't work, I didn't do anything till I was 25 because I was so down on myself. I had such severe depression and anxiety. I couldn't keep a job because I was so embarrassed of myself. I was so ashamed. Look at her, she's trying to have life even though she doesn't have her kids anymore. That's what I would hear in my head because there were so many mean things that people had said to me about because nobody understood my side of it and what led up to it and all that. But it was never what I wanted to happen, of course.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the resources to be a single mother with a job and her own. I didn't even know how to be a person yet. That's what I mean, because I was so young.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it meant to keep a job or have your own place I didn't know any of that stuff till after all that happened. So, I don't know. I guess I'd gotten a job and I started making some money and I was like, well, if I can get this job, then maybe I can get a car because I didn't have a car at the time. And then I met this woman at work my first week of that job, and she was right across from me. We're working together, and she introduced herself to me, and she just happened to live down the street. So then we started riding together.
Nice.
And her name's Regina. That's another person that really changed my life. She told me that when she first met me, I was so broken and so down on myself that she knew something was wrong, and that she felt in her heart that God told her that she needed to help me. And I didn't know this lady. And like I said, I was not trusting of anybody at that time because I wasn't going to open up to anybody ever again because of everything that happened. I didn't trust anybody. But she started giving me rides, and she let me ride with her until I had the money to get a car. And then I got a car. And then we ended up being neighbors. And she's not my neighbor anymore, but she's still in my life to this day. But she got the whole story out of me. Every day she would ask me more questions about my kids and what had happened. And she told me one day, she was like, "You do know that what happened to you, and it was wrong the way it happened, and that you're a victim in this. Those things happened to you. You didn't cause those things to happen," like that kind of mentality. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "This is all my fault. All of it's my fault." And she was like, "It's really not. And they deserve to see you overcome. And you have to overcome this because they are your children and they will love you." Because I was so afraid that they wouldn't love me when they did get old enough to understand what had happened, that they wouldn't love me the way I am. Or, so she really worked with me on getting my confidence and helping me have a life for myself, so that when they were old enough to know me, that I would be a person that was safe for them to be around. And because all I ever wanted was to be a good influence. And they might know what happened, but I wanted them to be able to see that God changes everything if you just let him.
Yes.
So that was the turning point.
Speaking of that, when did you come to know God?
That's a whole other thing. Well, I was actually raised in church. I grew up in a Methodist church, but whenever I lost the kids and all that happened, I stopped going. And then I would go every now and then with my dad for a while. And then my dad started going to New Vision sometimes, which is where Tanya goes and everybody. But so I'd been there a couple times, and then I would go there to visit Arbor on her birthday and stuff. But they had what's called the God Encounter, and like I think I had been going there on Sundays and Wednesdays, but not for very long. Or maybe I hadn't went on Wednesdays yet, maybe just Sundays. But I did the God Encounter. And I don't remember if this was the same day or if it was before, but me and Tanya had a conversation outside of the church one night, and I told her, I was like, "Look, this has been the most traumatizing thing that's ever happened to me, and I don't know how to get over it."
Oh, we're going to pause right there. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
We're back from the break, and we are just about to get into this turning point moment. Well, we've talked about the turning point, but a moment that you were about to have when God shows up. So tell us, you're in the car, you and Tanya are in the car, right?
Well, this was actually at the church.
Okay.
So we're standing outside New Vision, and I just felt it on my heart that I needed to tell Tanya about this because at that point, Arbor was like 9. And so we'd been knowing each other for 9 years, but only through visits. Like, we didn't talk to each other every day and stuff, but they had let me visit her for that whole time. But I was about to leave the church that night, and I felt my heart just tell her how you feel. Just tell her how you feel. Because I'd kept all my emotions in for 9 years about how I really felt about them and what they did for me and what they were doing for her and all that. So I was like, I just really need to talk about this. And she was like, okay, because she's always willing to listen. But I was like, this has been the most traumatizing thing that's ever happened to me, and I don't know how to get over it. I said, I think about it every day. And even though I've accomplished things in my life, I still feel empty. That no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to fill that hole. And even though I'm here with you guys and all this is great, and I get to see my kids and all that, but I was like, I still feel there's something missing, like, and it's getting harder for me to go this period of time without seeing her because I just love her so much, and I just feel so incomplete or whatever. And she prayed with me and asked me to accept Jesus in my heart, which I had done a million times before or tried to do. But that night, it really meant something because it came from her. And I guess, not that I needed their approval, but she told me, she was like, I want you to know I love you. Arbor loves you and God loves you. And you can do this and you're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. And it's like I'd been waiting 9 years to hear that from her. And I don't know why I needed it that way, but I immediately just felt like it just released, like I could breathe for the first time in 9 years. I could breathe. And she told me, she was like, you can come here if you need to. We have church on Wednesdays and we're doing all these things. And so I started coming on Wednesdays and Sundays, and then the God encounter really, really helped because I was able to forgive myself and forgive people from my past and all the things that had happened, and really decide to just do this and move on and not care about what anybody thought about all the past stuff. And she gave me the grace and the patience to do that. I know it was God working through her, but she was the first person besides my friend Regina I was saying about, which they know each other too. But through that, I felt understood and I felt seen and I felt loved for the first time since all that had happened to me. And it was from somebody who I respected so much because I watched them selflessly love my daughter and then love me for no reason. And my son too, and just I really felt like, okay, I don't have to worry about if they love me or not anymore. Because that was one of my worst fears, is that they didn't trust me or love me, or and my daughter too. Because when she was a baby, it was really hard because she couldn't show me affection.
Yeah.
And if she cried or something, she would want Tanya, not me. And like I couldn't comfort her, and having to just stand by and watch that was really, really hard. So when she was old enough to start hugging me and wanting to hang out with me or spend time with me and stuff, it changed a lot. And that was from working on that relationship with Tanya and Greg.
You guys have one of the most beautiful, beautiful relationships I have ever seen. For birth mom, adoptive parents to come together and do what is best, truly best for that child. And not only that, but I mean, do they just welcome you in, like, like you're part of the family kind of thing? Like there's,
it took time.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always understanding and compassionate and patient with me and caring. And we didn't discuss, okay, we're gonna be like this. It didn't happen. We had to learn each other, and it was just patience. I had to be okay with seeing her here and there and having little conversations, getting to know them and stuff. Because I feel like I didn't really even know them well until I started going to church there and seeing how they. Because I thought they were just being nice to me, and I was like, well, they're only nice to me because my daughter. But then I started going to church and I seen who they were as people, and they love everybody like that.
They do.
They give everybody a chance. And then the more I started going to church, I realized that's what God's love is. That's what Jesus, that's how he treated people regardless of what they had been through. And I read the Bible. I'd been in church my whole life until all that had happened, but I didn't understand any of the stories. I didn't understand what the Holy Spirit was. I didn't understand salvation or any of that until I started going to church. And not just Tanya and Greg, everybody at church that I've got to know that has accepted me and loved me and given me patience and kindness, because I've always felt like I didn't deserve it. And I know that's not true, but it's just God brought those people into my life for a reason, and I didn't know that the pieces were all going to fit together like this, and I couldn't ask for a better situation for me or my daughter or my kids, because my son goes to church with me too, so he gets to see his sister. They know their brother and sister. They wouldn't have had that before. They love Caden the same way they love her. It's just everybody there. We have a real support system now, and that is the difference. The difference is surrounding yourself with people who really do love and care about your well-being versus being around people that only want you for their benefit, or you know what I mean. That changed my whole world, because my family is very, very small. I didn't have the support that I needed to be raising two kids as a teenager. My dad was a single parent, so he was already doing his best to provide for us, and then I go and have two kids. So I didn't have all that, and now I feel like even though my life isn't perfect, I still struggle. I still struggle a lot with my mental health and how I feel about myself. But now I have the tools and the people to go to, and God, and places for comfort now, that I don't have to go search with people that aren't really interested in my well-being. I don't have to lean on people like that anymore, because I have the right people around me, which is insane, because I feel like I've lived like 5 lives by now. But another thing I had to learn is that it's okay to let love into my heart and let Jesus in my heart and let him allow those people to love me, because for a long time I rejected that too. Because just letting Tanya and Greg love me was a big deal for me at first, but when I realized that they were loving me because they wanted to, not because they had to, and not because they wanted to hurt me in any way, it's real.
Did you ever think that you would be like just loved and cared for by the adoptive family the way that you have been?
No.
Yeah. And and you had mentioned earlier when we were talking before we went live today about how much they've loved your son too. Yeah.
They've accepted him from day one.
What's it been like for your son?
Well, he loves them to death, and he says that he's happy that we have a church family now, and that we have Tanya and Greg, and he gets to see Arbor, and he loves church. He's went through a lot too, because you got to remember, I was 19 when I had her, which means Caden went through all that too. He was there the whole time. he might not have been with me every day, but he was with me for the majority of what was going on.
Yeah.
So he had to watch all those things happen to me, and he had to watch his mom be self-destructive, and because I was just depressed and crying and angry and upset all the time for like 7 years, and he watched all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give a lot of credit to him too, because God allowed him to still be in my life even when she wasn't, because he loved me no matter what. And I didn't understand that either for a long time, because I was like, how can you still love me after this? I let these things happen, because I felt like I failed them both, and that's the one thing you don't. That's like the most shameful thing that I could have done, I think, in that thinking, in that mindset, is that I failed my children. But he told me, even when he was little, that that wasn't true and that he loved me. And it just shows that I didn't know why I had the two kids at such a young age. I didn't understand why that was the hands that were dealt.
Mm-hmm.
But God had a reason. And those two kids taught me how to be a person, because I didn't even care about my future. I didn't care about having a life or anything until they were in it. And
Yeah.
that's so crazy to me, because I grew up feeling very unloved and very misunderstood, and like I wasn't seen and no one was paying attention to me, because my dad was always gone because he had to work, like I said, so I was left alone a lot. And the more I was alone, the quieter I became and the less I spoke up for myself. And so when I had children, it was hard for me to learn how to speak up for them, because I didn't do that anymore,
Yeah.
So all the bad, I had to unlearn it. I had to unlearn, and I'm still, it's like I'm unboxing stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of it.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of things that I struggle with, but now, like I said, I have a place of understanding and people who can talk me out of that when I need it. And I don't know, it's been the worst thing that happened to me, but the most beautiful thing that happened to me, because now I love God. My son loves God. My daughter loves God. She's being raised the right way by people who love her like they gave birth to her, and would never harm her or me or my son. Or it's just, I can't. This kind of story only happens through God, and that's another thing that woke me up to realizing that God was real, because all that happened to me and I was like, God's not real. Like, I was to the point where I just didn't believe in anything anymore. But then when all the pieces started coming together, I realized, like, only God can do that. Only God can write a story like that, because this is like movie stuff. Like, this doesn't happen.
Yes.
Especially not to us random people like me. I feel so like small and random, and like the odds of it happening,
Yes.
they're so small.
It would make a great movie. Absolutely would. To hear what it's like on your side of the story, and of course Tanya's been on the show before, and to hear what it was like on their side, to watch God orchestrate this whole thing, it's like watching him create some kind of masterpiece, like some kind of beautiful thing. And you said it best. You love God, your son loves God, your daughter loves God, you're with people that are full of Jesus, the love of Jesus, that love God, and just walking you through all of this stuff. And like he kind of gave her what she needs, but he gave you what you need too. It sounds like that's
I didn't even know.
You didn't even know you needed it.
No, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. And it's just, if you knew who I was then versus who I am now, it's a completely different person. I mean, I have the same heart that I've always had. I feel like I've always been a really caring, loving person, but I didn't know how to express it. So I would just let a lot of people take advantage of my kindness, because I didn't know limits, and I didn't know what was safe for me and how to protect myself. And So I've learned all that through this, because you can be a loving, caring, kind person and also be sure to put yourself in the right environments. And that changed everything. It's the environment.
As this has all unfolded and grown into what it is today, the relationships, the connections that you have today, has that made it easier to trust people again?
It's made it easier for me to decipher who is good for me and who isn't. Um, Not that everybody doesn't deserve the love of God, which I do, but it's helped me realize who my people are. Like who.
Your safe place.
Yeah, that's all I ever wanted, was a safe place.
You feel like you have that today. So, what is a typical? What does life look like on a typical week to week moment for you now?
Um, I don't wake up hating myself anymore,
Good.
and that was a big one. And I don't wake up feeling ashamed anymore, because I know that um, I put the effort into seeing all of it through. Because it was really hard to watch other people raise your kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got to see the goodness of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids are great kids. They're awesome.
Yeah.
They're so loving and so kind and so forgiving of everything. But now I know that I have a life where my kids are going to be in it, and we're going to have the relationships that we deserve to have. And I'm constantly working on my mental health and um, the things that I need to better myself. And I'm just striving to be better all the time. And that's what another thing that God does. Um, He takes everything that the devil meant for evil,
Mm-hmm.
and then
turns it to good. He'll use it for the
Yeah.
good. So it's the level of respect and self-control that you have had and patience, but the level of respect that you have had for Tanya and Greg in all of this, and respecting their role as, and who they are in her life. They're her parents, raising her, and how you've done that. Like, there's a lot of people who are in the positions of either they're facing having to give up their children right now, or they have had to give them up in the past, and it's really hard for them to grasp, accepting that role of, I've got to let someone raise them now. How did you manage to do that? Like, what would you say to people that are struggling with that? And what is the benefit of it?
The benefit is that you get to watch your kids grow up to be healthy people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to worry about their safety, or if you're going to be able to take care of them that month or pay that bill, or just the basic. You don't have to worry about if their basic needs are going to be covered because you couldn't do it that day, or you don't have to worry about that part of it. But you also get to watch them be loved correctly. And a lot of the times, I feel like women who end up losing their kids or having to give their kids up, it was because, like what happened to me, for instance, I didn't have my mother growing up, so I didn't understand what it took to be a mother. And I was so young, I didn't have those skills yet, I guess you'd say. Like, I didn't really understand what all it meant, to be a caregiver. And I feel like the women who end up in those situations, like me, have been mistreated in their childhoods, disappointed in love, or not loved the right way, or had family members that they trusted that let them down. So they don't understand that bond. But But I will say that it doesn't mean you can't create it. And it doesn't mean that there's not people out there who will love you the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that God doesn't love you and that God doesn't want you to be with your children. It means that He's given you the choice to better their lives and your life. And that, I think that's the biggest lesson I learned from it, is that it allowed me the space to work on myself so that when she was old enough, she could look at me and be like, wow, that's my mom. And she does have a mom and a dad,
Mm-hmm.
and those are her parents. And I don't look at myself, I look at myself as her mother, and she looks at me as her birth mother.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look at myself as somebody who is in charge of her life. And
Mm-hmm.
like with my son, I have to share him with his dad. So there's those decisions can be made together, but with her, that's not my role. Once I gave up, that's what you're giving up when you sign over your rights. But it doesn't mean you're giving up the fact that that's your child, or that your love is gone for them. You're doing the most selfless act, and a lot of people might from the outside not see it that way, but those people haven't been in your situation. And sometimes we have to do things that hurt, that are hard for
Mm-hmm.
us, to better the lives of other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I get asked all the time, like, how did you do that? How could you do that? If it were me, I've had people tell me, if it were me, I would just give her up and never see her again. And I just couldn't.
You never gave up, and that's the moral of the story right there. Never give up. So there's a lot to be said in your testimony today, and I want to thank you for coming on and sharing it with us. And for those who've adopted children out there, if it is a safe place, it can help everybody if you can work together in some way, if it is a safe environment. And if it's not, but loving and protecting them, and just showing the love of Jesus all the way around. We'll never go wrong if we show the love of Jesus. So I hope you guys find motivation in this today. Share this show with someone that might be needing it, could benefit from this. You are watching The Way to Break Free on Bold Brave TV, and we'll see you next week.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network.